Hello and welcome to episode 27 of the Final Whistle podcast with myself, Nathan Sherratt, Ant Canavan and Martin Cassidy. Today we're delighted to be joined by Alan Snoddy MBE. He's a bit of a legend, I believe, in Northern Ireland, and he's come about here to tell us a little bit more about the work that he's doing now and to hear a little bit more about his experiences of being out in the middle during a few World Cups in the late 80s and early 90s. Welcome, Alan.
Thanks very much, Nathan. Hi, Ant. Hi, Martin. Nice to be with you.
Hi, mate. Lovely to have you on.
Thanks for the invite.
I want to get straight into it, right? You've refereed at 2 World Cups, 1986 and 1990. Which was the better one?
Well, which was the better one? Difficult question to start with. I guess the first one, but obviously because at that point I was the youngest ever World Cup official at 31 years of age. In 1990, Peter Mikkelsen from Denmark, who was a good friend and unfortunately passed away much too young with a serious cancer problem, took that title from me. So obviously being asked in 86 came as a complete shock. I mean, I never in my wildest dreams expected to be getting a phone call to say that I was going to the World Cup finals in Mexico. So it wasn't as if I was sitting that day in work knowing that the FIFA referees committee were meeting to decide which 36 officials would be going. So the call just came completely out of the blue. So obviously that was extremely special. To be appointed a second time, probably answer your question, because again, on that particular day, I did know that the referees committee were meeting and there would be an announcement made, but no phone call came to the office, and I was driving home the short distance from my work in the bank, and the local news station just in their last sentence just said that Northern Ireland referee Alan Snoddy will be going to the World Cup finals in Italy, and I'm sitting at the wheel of the car and 10 minutes from the house. So you can imagine just that was another shock. So before I got home, the phone had already started, and I couldn't. And my wife knew obviously before I got through the door. So those are just the memories that I have. Difficult to say which was the best tournament. I think 1990 was a bit of a watershed for refereeing in World Cups, because that was the last time that we acted as a referee and a linesman in those days, or assistant as it is now. And in USA in 94, then there were specialist linesmen appointed with the referees. So 1990, I guess a lot changed in the next 4 years.
Obviously, they're massive games refereeing at the World Cup. We had Mark Kleinberg on not so long ago, and he said his massive games, the World Cup, the Champions League final and stuff like that, he never got a chance to enjoy them because he was so overwhelmed by the pressure. He just got through them, and then afterwards he was like, wow, I've just done that game, but I really couldn't have enjoyed it in the moment. Was it similar for you, or were you like, what was your experience of going into it, and did you enjoy the game in the moment, or was it not until afterwards?
I think what I always found, no matter what international game I was refereeing, should it have been a match for UEFA, a club match, or an international match, which was normally a three-day trip. You travel before the game, did the game, and come back. And in the preparation for the game, it was something that I really, really enjoyed and embraced, and quite often said to myself, enjoy every moment of this. Meeting the guys in the airport, traveling, seeing a different country, seeing a different city, because this opportunity gave me so many chances to see places throughout the world that you would just never see. So obviously the match is crucial because you've got to deliver. So I could personally, just as the game got closer and closer and closer, just tune into match mode, tune into get in the zone, if you like, or just be ready for the game. So probably that approach to the preparation relaxed me a lot more. Do you remember the game? You don't. You can perhaps remember some special moments in the game. People would come to you perhaps after any game, it doesn't matter whether it's domestic game or international game, and say that was an awful game or that was a really good game. And to be honest, I didn't really appreciate that, or I couldn't really work out the quality of the match. Obviously, at World Cup level, you see pieces of skill from the best players in the world, and some of those might just stick in your mind. But you are tuned in, and I think it's only after the game, certainly from my point of view, or even the next morning, to be honest, when you realise just what you've come through.
I think it's really interesting about what you speak about, because I know that there's the famous picture, and you probably got it in a house or something, but there's the famous picture of you acting as an assistant, and Diego Maradona being in the picture with you. And
yeah, I
mean, for a guy from Northern Ireland who works in a bank to find yourself stood less than a metre away from Diego Maradona, who I'm sure you'd seen on the television many times before. Obviously, you got to the World Cup. What was that? What did that feel like?
Well, Nathan, you're right. And unfortunately, when Maradona passed away, then this photograph appeared in quite a lot of places locally. And there was a bit of media interest as well. But actually, the moment that hit me occurred about 5 minutes earlier. And we were standing in the tunnel with Italy and Argentina lined up behind me. And obviously the Dutch referee and the Mexican assistant. So what I can vividly recall, and I never forgot this moment, was I don't know why I turned around, but I did. And all of a sudden you could see these world-class football players standing behind you that previously you'd only ever seen on television. And 3 or 4 months ago, you would never have dreamed that you would be standing in the same tunnel as they were. And that's when it hit me for a few seconds. And then I realised, Alan, okay, you're here. You need to just get a grip. You need to focus. You need to concentrate. It's 11 against 11 or whatever things were going through my mind. So that moment of reality had hit me before we got to the toss-up. And, it probably happened to most of the match officials there as well. But there was a ordinary guy from Belfast standing in the middle of this worldwide coverage. I knew I had to focus on the game, one decision after another, step by step. And if you get them all right, then okay, you can be appointed to the next game. But yeah, I mean, these are moments that you never forget.
It'd be one of the things I was talking to you, and knowing that you worked in Latvia for a while, is that obviously what we do work with the International Soccer Federation, the small sides of football, and one of the strongest nations is Latvia. And we were surprised how strong they are in a six-a-side game, but they're not that strong in the 11-a-side game. They are world beaters in six-a-sides, but not in futsal and stuff like that. But not on the 11-a-side. Is the reason for that, do you think, or is the exposure they get on mainstream TV?
It's a very hard question to answer, Martin. I know in your tournament in Crete there were a group of Latvian referees that went.
Yeah.
On a sort of working holiday, as they called it, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And it was great that they could get this international experience, in a refereeing. I have no idea why the six-a-side, the indoor halls that they use in the wintertime, maybe six-a-side is more popular. Maybe it's more of a tradition there. I know the 11-a-side, well, certainly the national team, have suffered greatly in the last few years after a lot of success. Was it 20 years ago when they qualified for the Euros? It's an interesting one.
Yeah, because the quality, the technical ability of them is second to none. And as you say, the referees, we had 2 referees from Latvia, two good lads actually, Artos and Mareks. And it's what I find working in that environment is when you're working internationally, trying to reference what it's like in an 11-a-side game, is we always say about how we manage a game and personalities and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I always find that personality traits in different countries of what's funny in Latvia might not be funny in the UK. And a sense of humour transfer, I think. I've always found that interesting from a tournament point of view, of how you find, like, our Dutch referees really funny, really get the UK and English sense of humour. But Latvians and Lithuanians just wouldn't, even though they're English and all that. I always found that. Did you ever feel that big, obviously, with Northern Ireland and all the sense of humour of the Irish and the English sense of humour? Did you find any sort of difference with regards to how people respond to how you deliver stuff? Because some people deliver it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I talk about when I take seminars abroad in Europe or in other parts of the world, that's because what I love in seminars is to add some humour into them, make a joke, make some comment, which you can do, let's say, in the British countries or countries that understand the language. So I suddenly discovered after a while using humour until they got to know you was a little bit more difficult. Because of different cultures, because perhaps they have to translate what you said in English into their own language, and the joke, if you like, or the timing of the joke gets a little bit lost. I really, the best example I can give, or one of the best examples I can give, was when I did a seminar for FIFA in China, and it was a great seminar, great people, great facilities, everything was tremendous. So this is not a criticism of Chinese in any shape or form, but they didn't laugh at the jokes early on, and I suddenly realised why. Alan, there's no point, because you're not getting through. It's not working. It's not happening. So I asked the guy that was leading the seminar, who was a good friend. I said, why are they not laughing at the jokes, or is there something wrong? He said, no. He said they have so much respect for the visiting people that they won't laugh at them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because then the local instructors then took a presentation just immediately after mine, and it was like a world war, because the fighting and arguing, it was just night and day. But if I told them it was snowing outside, they would just, yes, Mr. Allen, we agree. So you have to be aware of that. Then other countries, okay, Latvia, Lithuania, is a sort of 2 generations, where you've got the older generation from the Soviet era and the younger generation who are more, let's say, I don't quite know what the right word would be, but a different culture from what their parents were, for example.
Yeah, the outlook's different, isn't it? Yeah, I agree. And I remember joking about how many shaven heads there were in Latvian teams, and God, have you ever heard a player who's got curly hair? Joking. I started calling one of the referees Curly. Just went right over his head, pardon the pun. People were laughing. And then when you're trying to deliver stuff like that in the training environment, soften it. We've always used like icebreakers and stuff like that. Yeah. I just realised really quickly I just couldn't do it. And you've almost become like a robot, as we always try to fight against. But because it's always been a strong tool in my box, and having a bit of crack and softening the atmosphere by joking, I realised very quickly on an international stage it's very, very difficult to do that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's certainly more difficult. Once you've met the groups maybe 2 or 3 times, then, or let's say in the social times, meal times, or in the evenings, then they start to understand you more as a person, and it becomes more relaxed. And
because I remember talking to Howard Webb about he was saying about how they prepared for South Africa when they knew people were going to be using vuvuzelas, and that's going to be a really annoying noise. that pre-tournament, they were training and they had speakers in the training grounds booming out this Vuvuzela. I remember talking to Mike Malarkey as well about it, and he said, oh yeah, it was like, because when I started watching the telly, that World Cup, I was thinking, bloody hell, that noise is doing my bleeding head in. Of course, from a referee's perspective, I would never have thought of the acclimatisation. That must have been difficult. There must be things like that you've seen in games preparation.
Yeah. Well, it just shows the detail that they go into. Yeah. Better to listen to Shakira, by the way, than the.
What did you think in Mexico?
Mexico, yeah, it was. I think back in those times in Mexico and Italy, there wasn't any real noise associated with the competition. I don't think so.
Yeah, there was loads. When we talked to Sonia Denicourt, she had lots of balls behind her about the different balls. And just over that span of a short time, she would describe them. When you go back to, in Mexico to where we are now, just with the ball, the difference in just the ball is just. So imagine what the referee and training techniques have moved forward to.
It's night and day, Martin. It's night and day. I mean, I suppose I could explain after I got the phone call from Mexico '86. I mean, there was no, and again, this is not a criticism. This is just the way it was, and you prepared on your own. I went to the local park most nights and we had the issue then with the altitude, which was unknown. We had the issue with the weather. Is it going to be hot? So I can remember looking at a few training ideas to prepare to be refereeing at altitude, and it was so basic, sprinting, and try and get yourself out of breath to cope with it. But I mean, this was amateur stuff. But having said all of that, none of us were affected by the altitude when we got there. It wasn't a big deal, and probably because I was very, very fit at that stage as well and relatively young, that it was something that was not difficult to cope with. But the point I'm making is, if you compare the support in '86 and the support in 2020, 2021, it's night and day. With the fitness coaches, the heart rate monitors, all the psychology support, the tactical awareness support, nutrition, hydration. The list is really endless. So it's changed, but that's what it was.
And the game itself, I mean, I don't know if it's because of this modern era, we're living in a world of information and everything is so rapid, but the game seems to fundamentally change from season to season with little tweaks in the laws of the game just to try and eke out a little bit of more entertainment or get a bit of technology in and stuff like that. Whereas back in like you said, 86 to 1990, it was, I wasn't there, I wasn't around, but it seems like it was the same game tournament to tournament. Whereas now, with the changes, like we said, in the ball, in comms, in buzzer flags, in all that sort of stuff, the change is so rapid. And I do wonder, with all this rapid change that's going on, what will football look like in 5 years' time from now, in 10 years' time from now? Will referees even be on the field of play? We're already talking about doing away with the system referees and replace them with semi-automatic robot camera things.
Yeah.
I mean, from the inside view of where you've been, what do you think football's going to look like in 5 years, 10 years?
Oh, it's a good question, and it's a good question. And you're right. They've already had a trial with this offside VAR type offside decision. So you can be sure that this will arrive. I remember when vanishing spray was introduced, everybody was laughing. Mm. Why do we need this? And I don't know, Martin, if you remember standing over the ball and ushering the players back 10 yards, and that was all we had to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they moved back, and when they got to 10 yards, then we had the game restarted. Then referees started to measure out the distance for the players and bring them back, and then the vanishing spray come in, which players the players expect it to be used, and they immediately come back and stand behind the line. And then we get into communication systems. Before that, we had the buzzer flags introduced, VAR, then offside technology's on its way. So I can never see a game of football without a referee of some description. But of course, we need to remember that I guess 99.9% of football matches will always be played without VAR, for example, because it's only going to be the very, very top level, and at most the top domestic league in probably the majority of countries. So, grassroots domestic games will still need the 3 officials or 4 officials, as the case may be, without palm systems and vanishing spray. So the game at that level probably won't change, but what's introduced at the very top level is a very good question.
Are we seeing 2 tiers of football develop almost? A separate game from football that's played that we know and love at the moment to the elite level of football, which will, again, maybe evolve and branch off and become its own separate thing?
Yeah, and I think unfortunately what we're seeing at top level, even with the FIFA officials in different countries, is the countries that have got all these expensive toys in operation in their domestic country, those match officials now are starting to have a huge advantage over the match officials in the smaller countries whose domestic games don't have VAR, obviously. Although I know UEFA are doing a great job in training a lot of match officials from countries that don't have VAR, but when important matches arrive, who's going to be appointed to the game? The match officials with VAR or the match officials without? What would any of us do in those circumstances? We would experience, guys. So
I'm interested to.
That's another issue.
Yeah.
I was just interested to ask, we've talked a lot about communication here, and obviously you were right in the midst of your career, really, when this change between having 3 sort of what you would call referees to having a referee and 2 specialist assistants, generally from one country, coming together. And obviously you did a lot of Europa League and Champions League, and obviously what was UEFA Cup back then, with colleagues from the same country. Yeah. I'm just interested to understand, firstly, how the difference is, but obviously you're now involved in coaching at an elite level, and you must notice that there's a lot more trust and a lot more of a tight-knit sort of feeling amongst the group of officials because they work together on a regular basis and come from the same domestic leagues with the same experiences.
Yeah, no, there's no question of that. And the top, in the bigger countries, there would be 3 or 4 teams of match officials who would work together on a week-to-week basis. If one of the smaller countries has got a referee at elite level or category 1 level internationally, then he will have his dedicated team of match officials from 2 assistants, obviously, in the 4th official. Some of them will probably be working with a VAR from another country simply because VAR doesn't operate in their domestic competitions. But teamwork and refereeing is certainly one of the pillars that a successful team of match officials needs, because, again, as said about appointments being made from countries who have VAR and not, quite often it's the best team of match officials that are appointed, not necessarily the best referee. Yeah. Which is why it's so important to have everybody working together and understanding each other and respecting each other and supporting each other. Because I often would use this analogy to assistant referees by saying to them, you guys aren't going to get an appointment if the referee doesn't get appointed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I just think it must have been really interesting for you, because obviously you were in the middle in games in at the World Cup in 86 and in 90 with obviously colleagues from overseas. But when you were doing your sort of, how you say, international appointments, when you're in the Europa League, UEFA Cup as it was then, and the Champions League with 2 domestic-based colleagues, you must have noticed a difference and felt maybe a little bit better with colleagues from Northern Ireland.
It's difficult to answer that, because that's the way it was, and we didn't know any different. And Yes, it was the only occasion when we had assistant referees or linesmen from another country. You work with them, but it was the same in all. I don't know, was it 52 World Cup matches, every tournament is it in the finals, and every one of those games had a mixture of nationalities. I think there was probably a tendency maybe to keep Spanish speaking officials together, English speaking officials together. Perhaps Asians together in one group, but it wasn't always possible to work that way. And I have no idea how the referees committee at that time would have decided who will work with who. But again, it, as we've said a few times already, the differences in refereeing in general that have happened over the last decades are just enormous.
Yeah.
And how many people now for a top level game when you include the VAR, AVAR, and the operators, etc., etc. So I think it's nearly nine people in total.
It's scary, isn't it? And just thinking about your journey myself, the way attitudes change, the way even society's changed from the way racism now, with dressing it robustly, and you see things pop up. I'm sure there was stuff that was going on in those areas that we probably would recognise as racism today and offensive now, but what we didn't then, from behaviours to comments and even what's a red and yellow card. And it's adapting from when you're refereeing and how you dealt with stuff. And then now you're a world-class, well-renowned referee instructor. The obviously techniques and methods that you used are just absolutely universes away from what happens now. And I've always wondered when I see people like you so well respected and such top ends educators and refereeing, how do you square that circle?
Well, I think it's important that you keep up to date, obviously, with what's going on. And that's the important thing. I guess a lot of it is also when we take these types of seminars is to get the input from the people that you're with, because I wouldn't be somebody that would stand up, talk for an hour and sit down. And again, that's old style referee instruction where somebody had 30 clips in front of them and they just played each clip, said something, played the next one and sat down again after an hour. So it's important to understand as well how the match officials work domestically and share experiences with them, and obviously attend as many of the seminars as possible when we're trying to keep up to date. I mean, probably handball at the moment is causing the most debate and discussion. And I mean, as you know, IFAB just recently have changed again the interpretation of this accidental handball for attackers. So these are things that it's crucial that you keep up to date with, and we're saying the right things and coaching the right things.
It's important because we touched on this. I couldn't have asked you to answer that better, to be honest, Al, because we've said for a long time, even at grassroots level, a referee can opt out of training. The way it is over here in England, you tick a box to say, I don't want to be considered for promotion. You will not get critiqued at all for the rest of your refereeing career. And I think it's really important, whether you go for promotion or not, that you do exactly what you just said for the reasons you just said, is that like you keep up to modern practices, modern thought processes, how people change, how people are in game. And I think all referees at every level, not just international level, need to be committed to trying to be the best they can be at their level by being up to date with all that knowledge that's offered. The county FAs do it for free. All you got to do is give up the time to get some wonderful education from people like yourselves. And it's always something that we've talked ourselves on a blog, that you shouldn't be allowed to opt out of training as a referee. I know we've got our commitments and life's busy, but we've got a duty of care to be as up to speed with everything as we can to deliver the game, whether it's at Hackney Marshes or it's at Old Trafford.
Yeah. Well, I think what I would be encouraging people to do would be to maximise their own potential. So, not everybody's going to referee the FA Cup final, Champions League final, Irish Cup final, or whatever, but if they can maximize their own potential and get maximum enjoyment out of doing what they're doing, and try and keep up to date with changes. And it struck me, I was doing a presentation the other night on managing restarts, and this was basic managing restart hints and tips, if you like. Have a process for a corner kick, for a goal kick, for an attacking free kick, for a drop ball. And what I was very aware of was that some of these clips, some of these situations had only recently been changed in the laws of the game. For example, the referee being hit with a ball and the team loses possession, so you restart with the drop ball to the team that had possession. But the reality was that none of these guys had refereed a game for 12, 13, 14 months and never had the chance to implement this change in the law. The goal kick, the attackers, the defenders being able to stay inside the penalty area and receive the ball. Thousands and thousands of referees, tens of thousands of referees all over the world haven't had that chance to put that into practice yet. And it's okay having a theory session on a Zoom call and showing them clips of games in which it did actually happen. But whenever they get out there onto the grass, old habits die hard. And they need to be kept up to date with these things, Martin. So this is the point that you're making. Everybody before they referee a game in the perfect world should be going through this little 30 minutes educational session, if you like, just to do the simple things right.
Yeah, I don't think it's too much to ask, is it? And I think that's where we're going to go. When you see, someone who's committed and coming through the system, no matter how young or old they are, some of them is committed no matter how old they are. They could follow a referee. They could go to a game one week and he follows a referee who hasn't been upskilled, who doesn't really keep fit, who doesn't really, and he's letting them get away with everything. And they get a lad who's committed and wants to do the job properly. Well, he's the one, they're the one who get the stick, because they're doing it right. Yeah. And I think it's those sorts of problems that I think in the pie of making the journey easy for match officials, I think that's one of the ingredients that does need addressing. Definitely.
Yeah. So I don't think sending out a circular works. I think they need to be sitting down at least on a online course, face-to-face, obviously in the seminar room is 10 times better, as we all know, but the reality is that hasn't been possible.
Well, we've seen so much development over the past 12 months because of COVID in online seminars and information and stuff like that that's come through, and kind of even just to fill time, referees have been jumping on. I've been attending online seminars that were not even my own county, or not even. I've been jumping on other counties, other referee associations, just to see what they're doing, what they're saying, best practice, all that sort of stuff. And it's really taken this 12 months of COVID turmoil to push through that sort of thing that should have maybe happened maybe 10 or 15 years ago, because everyone's had a computer or a smartphone for that long. And it's disappointing that it hadn't been kind of picked up and pushed out until now. 2020 has been a weird year for everyone anyway, but Alan, no more than yourself at the end of it on the Queen's Birthday Honours list, becoming an MBE. Did that come out of nowhere, or was it like, were you expecting it? Where did that come from?
No, believe me, that was absolutely just from out of the blue completely. It's still a bit surreal, to be honest. It's an email arrived one day just to tell me. It's as simple as that. And normally the Queen's Birthday Honours would be announced, I think, the first weekend in June. So those of us that were lucky enough to be on that list were told, I think, a few days before that, but we had to keep it quiet because the official announcement wasn't being made until the autumn, was what they said, because they wanted to honour, obviously, people who have been involved in COVID, and the official announcement was delayed, I think, about 4 months. So there was me having to keep this quiet. At times I forgot about it. At times, is this real? And then eventually the official announcement was made. But, for somebody to take the time and sit down and get support for an application was one side of it. And then the other side for me was that for my family, really, that they were so proud and so honoured that meant a lot.
Yeah, good for you, mate. Good for you. But some of the emails I get through, said I've been left $50 million from some bloke. How did you think that wasn't a wind up? I think someone's taking a piss, yeah?
Yeah, I know.
That will...
Suggest you delete those, Martin.
Yeah. I had this vision that some bloke knocked at the door with some Edwardian wig on with a red cushion that said, "Alan, I've got a letter for you." I mean, not just a bloody email, but what achievements, and the stuff I've heard about you and the feedback of other people who know you, it's definitely thoroughly deserved, mate. So thank you for all you've done for match officials, not only in Northern Ireland but around Europe and the world. So thank you for that, Al.
Now that you are a Knight of the Realm, has your house got a moat? and is there the Black Knight that trots by every morning and just come on, joust me?
Yeah, no, none of that has happened yet. So
not yet, but keep an eye out for it because these nights.
I mean, I have a butler like Nathan. Nathan's got a butler. He might have a butler soon as well, mate.
Yeah.
Wonderful achievements, Al. Wonderful thing.
No, I think I could. No, listen, it's not going to change my way of life. It's not going to change my personality. It's not going to change anything that I do. It's just sometimes you just, in a quiet moment, you suddenly realise that it's there after your name. So it's. And then the investiture, obviously, it will be something to look forward to. But I guess with COVID as well, they're all delayed as well.
She'll get a 2-meter sword, and she'll do it from ages away.
Yeah. Brilliant, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's next for Alan then?
Well, what's next? Well, I'm trying to get this book finished, I suppose, is high on the agenda. So I started to write what I called a lifetime in refereeing on April the 1st last year. So it's coming up probably to about nearly 12 months of that. So to be honest, without COVID, this would never have started because what I suddenly found myself with was a lot of time that had been previously spent either traveling or working abroad or seminars and things. And I have been approached 2 or 3 times by a publisher, and I told her, sorry, I don't have time, I can't do this. Yes, I know it's a good idea. I know you think I have a story to tell, but I just don't have the hours in the day to do it. So all of a sudden that time arrived. So I started. I guess I'm about 80% of the way there, but it did grind to a halt in the last months, and I need to find the time and get everything finished off. But it's been a wonderful journey as well, just writing it, and a much bigger project than I ever envisaged at the start. But I'm so glad that I've got, let's say, 3/4 roughly of it completed.
A lot of self-reflection obviously involved in writing a book like that. Was there at any point where you just took a minute and went, wow, this journey I've been on is just, looking back at it now, blown my mind?
And many times, believe me, many times, and you're exactly right. That's just exactly what happened when you start to think. Luckily enough, and I don't know why I ever did this, but it's been a real huge benefit. And this is only part of the book, obviously, is games that you've refereed. But from the first match that I ever refereed, I kept a little book with the date, the teams, the score, where the game was played. So I've got those 2 little notebooks here with every single match in it that I ever officiated in. So without that, I'm not quite sure how I would have done the pieces on domestic football. For example, the international stuff probably would have been slightly easier. The 2 World Cups, of course, there's another example. I mean, back in '86 and '90, my wife kept off paper, the media stuff. The photographs, so I've got 2 scrapbooks of each competition. Nowadays, it's all on the phone, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that has been a big help. And And then, things develop. Wrote about my family days, my young days, before I'd even started to referee, school days. Think tried in various parts of it to explain to a non-referee reader sometimes how difficult refereeing is, or explain a change in the laws of the game, or explain, as we've discussed, actually the increase in technology in refereeing. So it's not just my story, it's my story plus bits and pieces that might just make people appreciate that refereeing is a difficult job, but a very rewarding job, and how football has changed as well in terms of refereeing. So that's been good. Also, changes in laws of the game over the years, I've tried to, just put those in little bits and pieces of stories that I've been able to tell.
Yes.
So I'll be happy when I get it done, because it's only going to happen once, and it's probably better to. I know it's better to do it right first time, and then it's done. So.
Yeah. There's another one of our trustees, Dave Brammer. I know you know Rich Mellon, but Dave Brammer was ex-Premier League line-out assistant referee, and he's in the process of just writing a book. He doesn't ever think it'll get published, but he just wants to do it for his own reflection, like Anthony said, and you agreed with. And I said, what are you going to call it? And he said, I'm going to call it blowing the flag and waving a whistle. I went, blowing the flag and waving a whistle? He says, yeah. I says, why are you calling it that? He said, because when I used to go out for a game, my mum used to say, what are you doing today, Dave? Are you blowing the flag or waving a whistle? And it's just stuck with him. And I just think that input on how much our family have an influence on what we do in our refereeing career.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, without family support, I would never be remotely near where I was now, but that's just the way it's worked.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm interested in asking you about, Alan, is, and this must have come when you were obviously taking yourself back to those places to write the book, was the whole, obviously, that the work I do with the third team is all about the sort of psychological side of refereeing and things like that. To think about maybe, because it's one of the things we spoke about with your colleagues, Andrew Davey in particular, he mentioned it, about going from from going from the smaller grounds in Northern Ireland to the biggest stadiums on the World Cup stage. Mentally, that must have put quite a lot of pressure on you to come into a different kind of environment. And obviously the support that they've got now, I would imagine is a lot more. How did you feel? Did you feel as if you maybe needed a little bit of support to bridge that gap from going to the domestic league to going to probably the pinnacle of the world stage?
I'm not too sure it would be possible to provide that support, but the way I dealt with it was a motivational thing. Walking out into a big stadium with a big crowd, for club games in Europe or throughout the world, for international games. This was something to look forward to. This was representing your country, and I never at any time felt overwhelmed by it or put off by it or nervous about it. I think, to be honest, I never felt nervous before a game. There's always a degree of nerves. I'm not saying I was cool, collected, but this was something to motivate you and keep you on your toes, and probably just keep the right balance between having your emotions under control and focused on the game ahead, one decision by a time. Okay, I've got that one, next one, and just work your way through the game. But it's probably not just Northern Ireland. It's a lot of the smaller countries. Referees are faced with this transition, this change, this change overnight from the smaller stadiums to the bigger stadiums.
No, I think it's really interesting because, obviously, I think that there's two sides of this story, isn't there? Really, you look at the the level of scrutiny now. I mean, obviously you'll know infamously what Andrew was obviously caught on television saying, and how that went viral and things like that. And obviously you know, at your time, there might have only been one camera in the stadium that covered everything. So there was maybe not dealing with those things. And obviously the social media aspect that's come with it seems to have caused a lot more challenges for referees, because we've seen now, obviously in this last season, we've seen that, you know, Mike Dean and Lee Mason having to take breaks away from the Premier League because of the pressure and the death threats to the family and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this is another change over the decades, isn't it, really, where the written press was probably the only avenue where people could express their feelings, or a journalist could write something, or somebody write a letter into the newspaper. So that was quite easy. You just didn't read the newspapers, although, to be honest, I did. And if there was something critical there, fine. If there was praise on a rare occasion, then very nice. Or you might have got a phone call to your house from some irate supporter because your number was available in a directory or something back in those times. But now it's completely different. And, you know, part of the education and coaching of referees now is making them aware of the dangers of social media. Yeah. So this is important, but you know, it's a different generation. Nathan, you're in that generation. You know, the social media left, right, and centre. The only one I have is LinkedIn. I don't do Twitter, don't do Facebook, because I don't need it. I'm not interested in it. If somebody says something in it about me, okay, that's entirely up to them. But it's not getting. I'm not reading it or hearing it. But to encourage the referees of the generation now not to get involved in social media it's not so easy.
Yes, so obviously, you know, I think, you know, obviously about the piece that I wrote to do with social media, and I think it's something that really needs to be now within the guidance of newly qualified officials, because it's probably the single biggest new factor that challenges their sort of position as a match official in the sort of modern era. Yeah.
And even a photograph taken on holidays in a stadium tour 10 years ago, when the referee himself perhaps wasn't even considering an international career in the future. And, you know, words can be added to any photograph to make it suit what somebody wants to write about. So it's just that's just the world we're in, unfortunately.
Yes, so obviously, you know, I think, you know, obviously about the piece that I wrote to do with social media, and I think it's something that really needs to be now within the guidance of newly qualified officials, because it's probably the single biggest new factor that challenges their sort of position as a match official in the sort of modern era. Yeah. And even a photograph taken on holidays in a stadium tour 10 years ago, when the referee himself perhaps wasn't even considering an international career in the future. And, you know, words can be added to any photograph to make it suit what somebody wants to write about. So it's just that's just the world we're in, unfortunately. We heard, actually, and we spoke about this probably many episodes ago now, about the Spanish official La Liga, who I believe he was friends with a player, and he went on holiday with him, his wife, both of their wives, the referee and the player, and he was actually demoted to the Segunda Division in Spain because of that sort of that friendship relationship, if you like, between the player and the referee, which is it seems disproportionate, but it's remarkable.
Yeah, and totally innocent as well, and perhaps several years ago, before the referee was anywhere near the level that he is now. But yeah, it's a strange world.
It is.
Indeed. Well, unfortunately, I mean, we could sit and chat all day, to be honest. You know, I'd love to hear these stories, but we are unfortunately out of time. I want to say, Alan, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It has been phenomenal getting to know you and your stories and your journey. And as soon as your book is out, I'm getting it, and I'm putting it on my Facebook page and my Twitter page, and I'm letting everyone else know about it as well.
Well, that was very kind, Ant, and my intention with the book is that let's get it finished first of all. So my intention is that all profits, if there are any, will be going to a medical charity of some description, because, as I said at the start, only for COVID, this project wouldn't be taking place. So I'm not writing it for any personal gain. I'm motivated by putting it all together and having a legacy, if you like, but at the same time, hopefully can make some contribution to something that deserves it. So,
see, this is why you're an MBE. This is why.
top bloke.
No, the MBE came after that decision was made. So
right then.
That's the plan.
Awesome. Alan, thanks very much for coming on the podcast, and thank you for watching and listening. From myself, Martin and Nathan, see you next time. Bye-bye.